Welcome to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. The Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. Bringing you the latest from the world of daily fantasy sports and gambling, so you can stop Googling how to join a squid game to cover all those parlays you thought were such a sure thing. Now, sit back and listen to one of the sharpest minds in the game. Here's your host, Dwayne Callender.
Good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday night. We are going to be talking PGA. We got the Players' Championship on tap early in the morning, so I'm going to give my thoughts on the DFS slate and my bets for the week and see if we can get an outright winner. It is quite a bit of news in the NFL as well. Obviously, we had the Russell Wilson trade from the Seahawks to the Broncos, as well as Carson Wentz in the consolation prize for the Washington Commanders. A terrible name still is a terrible name. I don't know what anyone can say to Washington, but it's a terrible name. But they have settled since they lost out on the Russell Wilson deal. They are trading 2 first-round picks for Carson Wentz. We'll get into the Russell Wilson stuff later. Hopefully, we'll probably recap it either Friday or sometime over the weekend to truly break down that trade, because Seattle's in rebuild mode. Denver is announcing themselves amongst the big boys, and the AFC is so hard right now that the Chiefs are going to be ruining the day that they opted to go for that extra play at the end of the half against the Bengals instead of just kicking the field goal and take care of business in the second half. It is such a massive mistake that the ramifications are just expanding. And the same goes for the Bills. The Bills window, again, the AFC is going to be so loaded right now with stacked teams. To get out of there, it's going to be a Herculean effort. Just straight up. It's like you're going to need health and luck, because everyone's talented enough to win the Super Bowl in the AFC with some of the big-time names that you can rattle off. And listen, as much as I rip on Brandon Staley and the Chargers, in spite of Staley literally shooting his team in the foot, the Chargers have so much talent that they're still going to be a problem for the rest of the AFC West and the AFC in general. Just so much talent in the AFC. But anyway, let's get into it. We got to talk about the Players' Championship. So we're at TPC Sawgrass, par 72 course. It is the pearl, I guess you would say, or like the crowning achievement, I guess, of Pete Dye, the legendary golf architect. But so you'll hear everyone say Pete Dye design. That's why it's because created by Pete Dye, who designed so many golf courses. But this is the one everyone talks about a lot. And truth be told, this is one of the hardest golf courses to navigate, even though it plays to amateur golfers year round. It's a public golf course. For the majors, they make it even harder. And because of the elements that you're going to be dealing with, more often than not, it's just the ball placement and trying to hit it on a pin. It can roll off. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. And of course, there's tons of water all around. So out of the 18 holes, 17 of them have water. So it's just, it's a lot of hazards, especially with hole number 17, which basically year round, folks have done the math. There are an estimated 100,000 golf balls that end up in the clink every year at hole 17, just because it's hard to hit. It is hard to hit that one. It's a par 3. It's hard to hit it, and even if you get it on the green, if you get it wrong, it'll roll off and you're in the water. It's just that simple. So you're gonna need to have iron play, to be honest, on this golf course from just looking at it in years past, and because it's such a deep field, because you're getting basically 140 of the best golfers, period. It's hard to win. So when it comes down to DFS pricing, the pricing gets flattened out where you're getting the top guys, but you're getting a ton of excellent golfers at low prices. So one of the things that I always have to kind of remember to take my notes on, and I always remember this, but it's so true. Even if you go back to the last couple of years of this tournament, obviously we lost out 2020 due to COVID when Hideki was crushing, but after the first round, you are likely to see in the winter a golfer 7,500 or less, and because outside, like in the last couple of years, you've had out of the top 10 scores for fantasy scores, at least 4 of them were 7,500 or under. We've had up to 6 7,500 and under scores just in the top 10 alone. Now, obviously, DFS scoring and the actual real life golf scoring are very different, because in DFS, it accentuates getting birdies and eagles when you can. So guys who are going to be aggressive because they're already falling behind, because they may have hit a water hazard, they may still score more than guys who just grind around the course and get pars. It is what it is. But the thing you also have to kind of keep in mind is, you can easily get cut. Yeah, so it's not as though you can skate by the first couple of days. If you don't putt well on the POA, and if you get in the water, you could easily miss the cut here. It's not unlikely. And, we saw this last year where, 2020, obviously got canceled after the first round due to COVID. Hideki was crushing. 2021 rolls around. We're all jumping up and down to play Hideki. And Hideki, even though, he would win the Masters, he missed the cut here at the Players, and it wasn't close. It's not easy. So there is very little, I would say, is safe when it comes to the Players' Championship. I will say that, you try to focus on guys who can play well on irons, and you want to have the off the tee game, and hopefully you get guys who are good on approach, and you go from there. But, let's just start talking about the guys at the top of the range for DFS purposes. So obviously we got world number 1, Jon Rahm, 11, just over 11K on DraftKings, 11,100, and he's 12,100 on FanDuel. That extra $100 difference on both sides, on top of being 11K and 12K, it's a, when you start pricing out lineups, it gets really hard to fit in Rahm. I'll be honest. I want to play Rahm, but man, you got to make some sacrifices to play Rahm because of him being extra expensive. And, yes, you can, you're not saving that much by pivoting off of Rahm to go to Justin Thomas, but it is not easy getting Rahm into your lineups. Truth be told, because I've been crunching numbers the last couple of days, and still not the easiest to make Rahm builds work to a point where I feel really satisfied. And we're up here on Wednesday night. I'm still not sure if Rahm's going to make my main lineup or not, but still want to come on do the show. But realistically, Rahm's ownership is trending down, and it's because he's been struggling with the putter. And folks are getting a little bit tired of paying Rahm at the top of the range for Rahm, even though he hasn't missed any cuts. He's still been going through these tournaments, making cuts, getting top 20s. But people expect the John Rahm to be winning tournaments and not getting top 20. That's the blessing and the curse of being the world number one. Now, with that being said, if you do look at the head-to-heads, Rahm is still 12-1 favorite. Head-to-head, he's favored over Morikawa. He's favored over Scheffler. He's favored over everyone else head-to-head if you're betting it outright. John Rahm versus any golfer. He's favored. It just kind of comes down to roster construction-wise, what you can do with Rahm, try to get him in there. The guys, I'll tell you right off the bat, I am not playing this week. Rory McIlroy, I went against my better judgment last week because he had such great numbers in the past at the Arnold Palmer Invitational that, it was the fear of missing out that I got caught with because I knew Rory could do well on that course. And, it worked out well in the first round. He was the first round leader and completely whiffed and bombed out the rest of the tournament and then was complaining about the weather conditions. Listen, if you're complaining about weather conditions at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, the Players Championship, listen, it's only going to get worse from here. I cannot recommend playing Rory at all this week. And I know people are going to play him because he's Rory McIlroy. He's former number one. People want to play him. I just think it's not a good play. I've chalked this up with there are a couple of guys I'm going to say are just not good plays this week. Maybe they get there, but I just don't see it out of Rory. He has not been closing out tournaments. So he gets in these spots where, he's still potentially in contention and not pulling the trigger. He cannot get over the hump right now. And to me, this is not the course you want to be second guessing yourself on shot selection because it can go south in a hurry. So next up, we got Colin Morikawa, 10,700 on DraftKings, 11,800 on FanDuel. Was 41st in his inaugural trip to Sawgrass last year, but he did have a nice final round. I remember this because I had played Morikawa, was hoping for him to kind of turn it on day 3. It just didn't happen. He just kind of languished there and took up a ton of salary and a bunch of builds. And, it's just one of those things you remember. So, Morikawa has the ball striking to do anything at any golf course. I don't worry about Morikawa from that standpoint. The biggest thing is the putter, and you're going to hear that a lot. Right now we're questioning John Rahm's putter. Morikawa, he's gained strokes putting in his last couple of events, but not exactly the guy you really would feel comfortable with taking a putter. I always equate it to watching LeBron shoot free throws. Yeah, can he make them? Certainly, but you're not exactly the most confident when he's doing it. In crunch time, yeah, you think he's going to get it done. But until it actually goes through the hoop, you are not remotely confident that he's actually going to make it. Speaking of questionable putters, we got Justin Thomas. 10,400 on DraftKings, 11,900 on FanDuel. Defending champion, obviously, he won it last year. But he had a hot putter in that tournament last year and got it done over the course of the weekend last year. The question is, we all know Justin Thomas is an excellent ball striker. Not as good as Morikawa, but JT's right there. The question is, where's his putter at? And in recent tournaments, he's been solid. nothing spectacular, but he's been solid enough that, Thomas is going to be one of, if not the most popular play in the 9K and up range, in my opinion. I just think that, casual folks are going to look at it and say, who won the tournament last year? They're going to see Justin Thomas, and they're going to see 3 other guys priced above him, and they're going to say, oh, I get a discount on Justin Thomas. Let me play him. So I think Thomas is going to get ownership here. I don't worry about golf ownership the way I would with other sports, because hardly ever are you going to see somebody who's 35-40% owned in a golf contest. It just really doesn't happen all that often, barring, something weird happening where you get a top 10 golfer in an incredibly weak field, and everyone's just looking to play him because he's the best guy at the course. In this case, we've got Thomas, who could repeat, but the evidence leans more towards Thomas playing well because, outside of winning last year, he was tied for 35th in 2019, T11 in 2018, 17. He made the cut, but wasn't even a factor. He was tied 75. And in 2016, he was tied third. He can easily get it done. It's just, I look at it as, if you're only playing 1 or 2 lineups, you're probably not going to get different enough in most spots unless you start playing some of the guys I'm going to be talking about later when you're playing Thomas. I'll definitely have Thomas in my pool, and I'll probably get over the exposure of what's being projected, because they're anywhere from 15 to 25% ownership, depending on the sites you're looking at, is what he's projected for. I think I can get, playing 150, and maxing out like the $5 tournament. Probably won't max out the 15. By the way, there is a Millie Maker contest on DraftKings. Actually, I misspoke. I said 15. I meant 25. So there's a $25 entry Millie Maker contest on DraftKings. They also have a $2,222 Millie Maker that I will likely not be in because I couldn't win any tickets for it. But hell, that content's probably filled too. Judging by where I last looked at it, because there was only a couple of spots left. But looking at some of those contests though, DK, you got to do better with the 222 contest, because you've got $1 million up top. Second place is $100K. Third place is $60K. I mean, you got a bunch of guys throwing in entries, that are running over $2,000 a clip. In order to even get anywhere remotely close to your money back, you got to finish top 10. It's the only way you're actually going to make any money in that contest. DK knows it's a terrible structure, but come on, we can do better than that. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here, but the other guys in the 10K range that we have to talk about here, Victor Hovland, great form, been excellent off the tee, is striking the ball well. His form is excellent. Definitely a guy you can pivot off of JT to. I have no concerns about playing Hovland this week. Just in terms of his course history, though, he only played it once last year and he got cut. Just one of those things where his skill sets fit very well for this course. I know he got cut last year. I'm going to look at it as a one-off, and his form is a lot better coming into the tournament this year than it was heading into it last year. So I'm going to give benefit of doubt and go with Hovland in some of my builds. But that is also the 10K guy. So just to kind of summarize it, Rahm, Morikawa, Thomas, Hovland, all in the mix. Rory definitely getting cut out the mix in terms of players to play. I just don't see it with Rory this week. As we get through the rest of the 9K range, Patrick Cantlay, obviously the FedEx Cup champion. I don't know what I'm necessarily doing with Cantlay because he missed the cut last year, missed in 2019, and in 2018 and 2017 he was tied for 23rd and tied for 22nd. Cantlay certainly can be a factor in this tournament. I just look at it from the standpoint of his best strengths. I think he can get better with the guys up top. So to me, Cantlay is more of a salary play if you're trying to get a little bit different by getting off of JT and you don't want to pay for Hovland, but I think Hovland is a better option than Cantlay for just $200 more. I don't know. That's just my take on it. So Cantlay's 9,900, and then on FanDuel he's 11,700. You know, the like at 20-1, not a crazy play. It's just I feel as though you can get there with some of these other guys. So not going too crazy over Cantlay. Xander Schauffele kind of in the same boat here. But the weird part was, as Xander hasn't been exactly lighting it up in my standpoint. I know, it's just he did well at the waste management. I will say that he did get a third at the waste management. I just look at it from the standpoint of I didn't see a ton of surging or him like stalking players down. It just kind of seemed by the numbers. So Xander is one of those guys that you can't play everyone. It's not that I hate him at all in terms of making the cut. It's just I'm not entirely sold on him scoring well enough in terms of being on the winner. I think he can still be in the mix, kind of grinding out the course, but I don't see him putting up any monster scores early and often and getting himself into the weekend. I look at it as, he makes the cut. He's hovering around the mix for quite some time. And, eventually he gets into the top 20 this week in final standings. That would be my pick for Xander, but I don't think top 20 is necessarily what you're putting up for in terms of DFS scoring. I think you're going to want a little bit more bang for your buck in terms of going for the ceiling performance. I think Xander works for cash games. I'm just not entirely sold on Xander as a bona fide GPP play, given some of the other options you can go with. Hideki, again, one of the reasons why. Hideki's $100 less than Xander on DraftKings. He's $10,900 on FanDuel. There's even more of a price difference. And we know Hideki can win this tournament. He's been playing great golf. He's definitely had some good finishes here, a couple top tens. As I said, everyone was all in on Hideki last year, got cut, took out a bunch of the field with him. But if you look at it again, I think he has better win equity than a ton of guys up here. So I think Hideki most certainly is in play. So next up, Xander can't. I'm talking about. I've already said Xander and Cantlay and combined the names. I was trying to say Cameron Smith, aka the guy who took Jordan Spieth's mojo, because a lot of the crazy shots and recovery shots that Spieth used to be hitting, Cameron Smith seems to have gotten that kind of mojo at tournaments these days. The Aussie should play well if the conditions get bad over the weekend. The question is, can he avoid enough danger with the water hazards with his driver? Because he's one of the least accurate guys with the driver amongst the field. I don't know if Cameron Smith is going to make my GPP pool just because I have so many guys that are closer to being a safer play than Smith that, you can't play everyone. And I know some people believe in playing 100-plus golfers. I'm just not one of those dudes. I would rather keep a tight player pool, play 40 or less guys, probably around 35 or so, to be honest. But you just can't play everyone, and Cameron Smith is probably going to end up on the cutting room floor just because I don't trust the driver enough to make him part of some of my main builds. And finally, wrapping up the 9K range, we got Scotty Scheffler. He's coming on as the hottest golfer in the PGA Tour right now. Won again last week at the Genesis. And, last week at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. And then he had the 7th at the Genesis, then Waste Management, and then another win at the Waste Management. I look at this, excuse me. I look at this, and Scheffler is playing the best golf right now out of everyone. His iron play is on point. He's been getting on strokes, putting. I just look at this and kind of say, Scheffler may end up being on my main team just to get a little bit different because I know folks want to play JT and Morikawa and not as much Rahm, but I could see myself getting to Rahm and Scheffler, and I'll talk about some of the other ranges, but having at least two of the guys in the 9K and 10K ranges, like at least take two guys from the 9K and up ranges and go from there. Because as I look through the 8K range, I look at a bunch of guys that I'm not entirely sold why their pricing is where it is versus some of the other guys I see in the 7K range. But I'll get to that shortly. And, the last guy I didn't mention in the 9K range that I know folks will ask, why I didn't mention him, but like if you were listening closely, you would have heard, Jordan Spieth is 9K. I look at it as a case where you play Jordan Spieth when Jordan Spieth's hot. Jordan Spieth has not been hot at all. And he wasn't in great form heading into the Ryder Cup. His form hasn't really improved that much since the Ryder Cup. He's just been kind of there. And if anyone I'm going to take with an erratic driver that it will scramble, I'll just take Cameron Smith. He's been a little bit better overall. Spieth has just not been there, and the driver is scary. At a course like this where you need to be able to drive the ball accurately, the idea of playing Spieth, I just don't get it. His history is not good here. His best finish in multiple years at TPC Sawgrass is tied for 41st. He's missed the cut multiple times over the last 8 years. I don't get it why people are trying to talk themselves into playing Jordan Spieth. I really don't get it. He may I talk about Rory being a bad play. Spieth may be the worst play of the entire week for the folks rostering him. I'm hoping Jordan Spieth's ownership hits double digits. I don't think it will, just because even the projections, while they usually are under what Spieth ends up being, I still can't see Spieth being double digit ownership this week. I just don't see it. I'd love for it because I know it will bust in all likelihood, but I just don't see it happening. All right, so just so I don't belabor the point, this middle tier range of in the 8Ks, I flat out don't like most of these plays. The only plays that I actually feel somewhat okay about are Adam Scott and Shane Lowry. Adam Scott, 8,200 on DraftKings, 9,700 on FanDuel. Shane Lowry, 8K on DraftKings, 9,600 on FanDuel. Because Scott and Lowry both like playing on tough courses, and they are not fazed by poor weather that you are likely to see over the weekend. Some of the other names that we talk about here, Will Zalatoris, questionable with the driver. Daniel Berger, yes, he plays in Florida, but he doesn't necessarily fare all that well in stacked fields like this. He pretty much plays well when he's got much weaker competition to go up against. So it really hasn't clicked this well for him. Not big on the idea of playing Joaquin Niemann at 8,400. I just think it's overpriced. 9,800 on FanDuel, not much better. It's just I don't. Yes, he won at the Genesis. Don't get me wrong. Niemann did win at the Genesis, but truth be told, I'm not as sold on Niemann yet. Yes, he got the win, I know, but more often than not, in these types of fields, these are the perfect spots where Niemann misses the cut or finishes like tied for 60th. I gotta see it from Niemann to be feeling good about him. Sungjae M, the less said about Sungjae, the better at times. He could dominate this course and shoot 10 under, or he can shoot an 11 on 17 in a blink of an eye, and you couldn't even be surprised by it, because Sungjae is that erratic at times off the tee. So again, he does well with ball striking, but it's the driver at times you got to worry about, and sometimes the iron play can be suspect too. But in his appearance last year, he did get top 20. I'm just saying, Sungjae is one of the most high risk, high reward plays, and it's not as though it's a safe play. This is a very risky play. Same goes for Brooks Koepka. I know people want to play Brooks. I'm not going to talk you out of playing Brooks, and it's a major, so maybe Brooks turns it on. I don't necessarily want to go down that road. It's the same thing where people who are trying to play Dustin Johnson. Oh, Dustin Johnson was the other guy in the 9K range I didn't mention. DJ coming off a back injury. Sounds like a terrible idea to be playing him at 9,800. We haven't seen him play. Brooks, health-wise, he looks like he's doing better, but that's still a question mark here. I just don't like these plays where, you have so many other options you can go to. You're just trying to force something that you don't need to force. So definitely not playing Dustin Johnson. Brooks, I feel as though that 8,600 price tag is a trap. So I'm going to need convincing to play it. I just don't see it. Billy Horschel at 8,100. Not interested. Yes, he's been playing well. No, I don't want to trust Billy Horschel in a tight pressure spot when, the slightest thing where people call for a review of the weather to see where a ball should be. I think that Billy Ho is very likely to miss the cut. That's just my opinion of the matter. I just don't see this as necessarily a great spot for Horschel to be playing. I think Horschel is one of those picks where folks are going to be wondering why they played him here. And it's not as though he's missed the cut a bunch of times, but his game translates into missing the cut here if he's not locked in. He's been hot. Don't get me wrong. Billy Horschel has been hot. I'm just not entirely sure it carries over as well as people think it will. Tyrrell Hatton, 7,800 on DraftKings, 9,500 on FanDuel. Just bad form. Yes, he could do well, but I'm just not expecting much in terms of development here. To be honest, I look at Hatton as a guy. Maybe he gets through the cut line, but that's all you can expect. He's not going to be pushing the envelope to win the tournament. I think that your efforts are better spent elsewhere than wasting shares on Hatton. So that brings us to the range I want to be talking about, which is in the 7K range. The chalk is going to be Paul Casey. I will likely not be playing Paul Casey if his ownership remains as chalky as it's looking, and it looks as though Paul Casey is going to be north of 20% ownership in certain stakes. So folks are looking at him being in the teens in the main contest, and then high stakes, that means he's over 20%. I just don't see the point in playing Casey because more than likely he's going to be somewhere in that top 20 to 40 range by the end of the tournament. Yes, he can do some damage, but not exactly challenging at the top of the leaderboard come Sunday. I just don't see it from Paul Casey, and because of the ownership that's going to be on him, you're going to just try to lap him with someone else that I think has potential. You got Max Homa, you've got Matt Fitzpatrick. Homa is 7,500 on DraftKings. Fitzpatrick is 7,700, and the pricing that you can get on some of these golfers with odds that are better than some of the guys in the AK range. So get this. Matt Fitzpatrick is 7,700 on DraftKings. He's 40-1 to win the tournament. Neiman is 50-1, and Neiman's 8,400. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, again, some of these guys in the 8K range, I could just as easily play the 7K guy and have better odds of winning the tournament. Like, why am I playing the 8K guys and trying to force it in? Outside of Lowry and Scott, I'm just not that interested in the 8K range. So, I mean, we've got a bunch of guys in the 7K range that, I could talk about quite a bit, but, I know we only have so much time to talk about it on the podcast, but I would say you got Corey Connors here at 70-1, great, like, outright odds, 7,300 on DraftKings, 9,300 on FanDuel. He's the long shot that I like to win the tournament, because if you're building off of the idea of someone that has Justin Thomas's skill set, you're looking at Corey Connors. Elite ball striking, solid with the driver, and the drawback to him is the putter. Like, to me, like, all the things that Corey Connors does well lines up with, if you are playing Justin Thomas, you should be playing Corey Connors as well, because the skill sets are very well aligned, right down to the critical flaws. They are both you're both petrified with them with the putter on a Sunday when they need to get it done. So, to me, if they get a hot putter, sky's the limit. They're off to the races. So, from roster construction standpoint, I think I'll probably align with having a rule where I'm setting up Corey Connors in the same lineups with Justin Thomas in a number of builds, because I think it makes sense. I think you should be having Corey Connors, if you're believing in Justin Thomas getting it done the way he does around the course. Corey Connors should be in a very similar boat with his skill set. So, I like Corey Connors quite a bit. I like Fitzpatrick. He's a grinder at 3,700. You can play Homa. He's been in incredible form. Siwoo Kim, always dangerous on Pete Dye tracks. He's been He's had decent course history. He was top 10 last year. I think he was ninth. Siwoo, could also blow up on the course. He hasn't actually missed the cut, but he did win. He did win the Players in 2017 here, so it's not as though it's out of the question that Siwoo can get it done here. He's done it. The question is Siwoo going to hit the water, which is very possible. So again, when you're talking about risk reward, you gotta balance it out. Because Siwoo's 7,300, same as Connors, and he's a slightly better odds to win it outright at 65-1. It's just one of those things where you can definitely build out the bulk of your lineup in this 7K range. So you got guys like Kokrak, you got Connors, obviously. Chris Kirk is 7K a flat on DraftKings. His pricing's crazy on DraftKings. Might be even crazier on FanDuel at 7,800 because on FanDuel you can just play a lock in Chris Kirk and just play all the top guys because of their pricing and because of the pricing structure. It just may be a Chris Kirk kind of build on FanDuel just to get things over with. It just makes a ton of sense. Tom Hoagie still on the heater of his life, just playing great golf over the past 3 months. 7K on DraftKings, 8,600 on FanDuel. He's just been putting up results and getting results. He obviously had to win at Pebble Beach. He was second at the Amex, and the Waste Management. He came in top 20. He's just been in great form. So again, not the craziest thing in the world. If you see some of these guys that are 7,500 and under being a top 10 scorer, I can absolutely see it. And the chalkiest guy I didn't really talk about is Paul Casey, who is actually supposed to be one of the AK guys. He's priced at 3,400. I just think so much ownership is going to gravitate towards Casey at that cheap number that I'm probably going to be matching the field. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to go overweight because I'm not as much of a believer in Paul Casey winning this one outright, but he can put up good numbers. I feel very confident in Paul Casey put up good numbers. But if somehow Paul Casey busts, maybe you can get different by playing a Cameron Young or an Alex Noren. Noren's 7K on DraftKings, 8,400 on FanDuel. Cameron Young is 7,200 on DraftKings. I don't think he popped up on FanDuel. I couldn't find him. So they may not have added him to the pool for some reason. But they may actually have that resolved by later tonight. We'll see. But it's one of those things where I think you should be building the bulk of your lineup in this 7K range. You've got guys who, Gary Woodland has multiple top 5 finishes this year. Is good into wind. He doesn't have the best course history because he's put it into the Drinko numerous times over the years. But certainly Woodland is a guy who could put it together for 4 rounds and find himself in a winner's circle. So I'm not going to go necessarily crazy over, try to jam in the 8K guys. I think you can live very comfortably in the 7K range. And one of my favorite plays is just under the 7K range, but Brian Harman. Brian Harman has had back-to-back top 10 finishes here. He goes very well into these tougher courses. He's made 6 of his last 7 cuts. He was 3rd at the Amex. I think he was tied for top 15 at the Waste Management. Harman's form has rounded back after he ended the year pretty shaky. He's starting to come back into form following swing season. I think Harmon totally makes sense on DraftKings. FanDuel, the pricing is a bigger discrepancy because it's $8,400, so you don't get the crazy savings that you were getting potentially with Chris Kirk on FanDuel. But on DraftKings, it just makes a ton of sense to be playing a lot of Brian Harmon. So I'll be committing to that, using the salary to play the big boys up top, and kind of go from there. But, that's all I got in terms of the breakdown, because I'm not going to be focusing too much on the 6K range, truth be told, because I got so much talent in the 7K range. I don't need to dip into the 6K range. I can fit in the top guys with the 7K range and have productive conversations and kind of go from there. So that'll do it for me. But just as a recap, think about the guys in the top 10K, 9K and above range. Try to get 2 of those guys in there, and then you could supplement it with. Obviously, you could do all 4 in the build up, but at the end of the day, I would say the 7K range. If you can get that right, you're going to ship a Millie Maker if you play the $25 entry. Just because I don't think enough people are going to be jamming in the 7K guys to get it done. I think they'll try to do a more balanced build, play some 8K range, but the 7K guys have bets that are better than the 8K range. So in terms of the head-to-head betting markets, there are ways of going about it. So, in terms of outright winners, I already told you about feeling good about Corey Connors at 70-1. You can do Shane Lowry at 50-1 at certain books. Just because of the ball striking, it makes a ton of sense when you're doing these outrights. Brian Harmon on DraftKings, I still saw this up. Brian Harmon was plus 160 to make top 40. I think that's one of the most egregious lines. I think Harmon is probably T30 or better by the end of this tournament. I don't think it's that much of a challenge. But just a couple of bets. You got Hideki, top 20 finish. You can get better than even money as a slight dog. Again, this is one of the toughest courses. And, you got to think about the roster construction. I think there are enough avenues to get it done using the guys in 7K range to then sort out what you want to do at the top of the range. So, those are some of my thoughts in terms of the outright bets and who's going to win. I still think this probably leans towards Morikawa and Rahm than it does JT, but, stranger things have happened. So I'm going to get myself out of here and just start finalizing lineups for tomorrow. But best of luck to everyone. Hopefully this was beneficial to you. And until next time, have a good one. Later.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all other major outlets.